Well, here I am, Keth'mori of the Nexari Intelligence Division, about to tell you the story of how my entire civilization learned the hard way that there are some lines you simply do not cross. And trust me, when I say hard way, I mean it in the most catastrophically stupid way possible. It started on what should have been a perfectly routine Tuesday morning on the human colony world of New Haven. Nothing fancy, mind you, just your standard compliance operation, or as we like to call it back then, gently reminding the locals who runs this part of the galaxy. The Nexari Empire had been doing these little demonstrations for 3 centuries, and honestly, we had gotten pretty good at it. The plan was simple, elegant, and foolproof. Land our ships, make some noise, relocate the humans to a more suitable location, and claim their nice little farming world for ourselves. Standard operating procedure, really. The humans had been there for maybe 50 years, which in galactic terms is basically like claiming squatters' rights on a parking spot. I was standing on the command deck of the strike cruiser Domination's Edge, and yes, that name should have been our first warning sign, watching our ground forces deploy with all the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. 3,000 Nexari troops, full combat armor, enough firepower to level a small moon. Against what? Maybe 2,000 human colonists with farming equipment and whatever pathetic excuse for weapons they could cobble together. This should be over in an hour, Commander Vasquez said, his mandibles clicking with what I now recognize as dangerous overconfidence. These primitives always fold once they see real military power. Oh, how wrong we were. How spectacularly, monumentally, universe-shatteringly wrong. The first sign that something was off came when our troops encountered the human settlement's defensive perimeter. Instead of the expected panic and immediate surrender, we got well. Let's just say the humans had some very creative ideas about defensive architecture. Trenches that seemed to go on forever, barricades that our scanners somehow kept missing, and weapon emplacements that appeared out of nowhere like some kind of military magic trick. Sir, came the voice of Ground Commander Thexnell through the comm system, we're meeting heavier resistance than anticipated. These humans seemed to have prepared for this. Prepared? Hey, these were farmers, for crying out loud. What could they possibly have prepared with? Pitchforks? Farming tractors? The hubris of our species was showing, and it was about to get us all killed. But the real moment, the exact second when everything went from routine operation to galactic catastrophe, happened at 1432 local time. I remember it precisely because I was taking notes for my report, like the good little intelligence officer I was trained to be. Our forces had surrounded the main settlement building, some kind of community center where the humans had gathered their non-combatants. Standard procedure called for immediate evacuation, no exceptions. What we didn't expect was for the humans to have turned their community center into a makeshift fortress, complete with enough supplies to last months. Breach the building, Vasquez ordered. Remove all occupants. Use whatever force necessary. And that's when Trooper Gexmek, may his atoms be scattered across the void, made the decision that would haunt our species for generations. Instead of following standard non-lethal evacuation protocols, he decided to make an example. He targeted the human young. The sound that came from the human defenders when their children were hurt, I cannot describe it properly. It wasn't screaming. It wasn't crying. It was something primal, something that seemed to resonate through the very fabric of space itself. Every human in that settlement, and I mean every single one, suddenly stopped what they were doing. The silence that followed lasted exactly 7 seconds. I counted them, because in that moment, every instinct I had developed over 2 decades of intelligence work was screaming at me that something fundamental had just changed. Then the humans started moving again. But this time they moved differently. There was no more chaos, no more desperate defensive actions. Instead, there was a cold, calculating precision that made my blood run cold. They weren't fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to kill. In the next 30 minutes, we lost 600 troops. 600. Against farmers with improvised weapons. Our casualties weren't from superior firepower or advanced tactics. They were from humans who had apparently decided that dying was no longer an option, and taking as many of us with them as possible was the new priority. Sir, Thexnal's voice came through the comm again, but this time it was different, shaky, afraid. We need immediate reinforcement. These humans, they're not fighting like anything we've encountered before. I looked at Commander Vasquez, expecting to see the same confident expression he'd worn all morning. Instead, I saw something I had never seen on a Nexari face before, genuine fear. Pull back, I suggested quietly. We can regroup, develop new strategies. Absolutely not, Vasquez snapped, but his voice lacked conviction. We are the Nexari Empire. We do not retreat from primitives. That decision right there was the moment we sealed our fate. Because what we didn't know, what we couldn't have known, was that every human child that was hurt that day had parents, grandparents, siblings, even friends scattered across dozens of worlds. And every single one of them was about to receive a very simple, very clear message. The children had been hurt. The war had begun. 3 weeks later, I found myself standing in the pristine halls of Nexari High Command, trying to explain to a room full of superior officers why our routine compliance operation had turned into what could generously be called a complete disaster. The marble floors gleamed under the artificial suns, and every surface reflected the kind of sterile perfection that screamed we are very important and definitely know what we're doing. Spoiler alert, we absolutely did not know what we were doing. Admiral Quindar, resplendent in his ceremonial battle armor that had probably never seen actual battle, tapped his claws impatiently on the conference table. So, Intelligence Officer Keth'mori, you're telling me that a handful of human farmers managed to inflict significant casualties on our forces? Yes, sir, I replied, trying to keep the "I told you so" out of my voice. The humans demonstrated unexpected tactical capabilities and, more importantly, a complete disregard for standard surrender protocols when their young were threatened. Commander Vasquez, who had somehow managed to spin our catastrophic failure into a strategic withdrawal for intelligence-gathering purposes, leaned forward with his usual air of superiority. The humans simply got lucky. Primitive emotional responses, nothing more. We caught them on a bad day. Admiral Quindar's mandibles clicked in what I assumed was agreement. Exactly. These creatures operate on pure emotion rather than logic. Unpredictable, yes, but ultimately inferior. We simply need to adjust our approach. I wanted to point out that adjusting our approach was military speak, for we have no idea what we're doing, but we're too proud to admit it. Instead, I nodded and prepared my detailed report on human behavioral patterns, fully expecting it to be filed away and forgotten like every other inconvenient truth in military history. What's the current status of human territories? Quindar asked, his attention already drifting to the holographic displays showing our vast empire. That's interesting, sir, I said, pulling up my latest intelligence briefings. All human diplomatic channels went silent approximately 72 hours after the New Haven incident. Complete radio silence across all their colonies, trade routes, and communication networks. Probably licking their wounds, Vasquez said with a dismissive wave. Typical primitive behavior. They'll come crawling back with surrender terms within the month. But here's the thing about intelligence work. It's all about noticing patterns, and the pattern I was seeing made absolutely no sense. Human territories hadn't just gone quiet, they had gone completely dark. No distress signals, no emergency broadcasts, no panicked communications between colonies. Nothing. It was like the entire human presence in our sector had simply vanished. Sir, I continued, I've also noticed some unusual activity in the border regions. Our automated monitoring stations have detected increased ship movement, but we can't get clear readings on the vessels. Admiral Quindar finally looked up from his displays. What kind of ship movement? Unknown, sir. The readings are inconsistent with any known human vessel configurations. And there's something else. I paused, knowing how ridiculous this was going to sound. We've lost contact with 3 of our reconnaissance ships. Lost contact? Vasquez's head snapped up. What do you mean, lost contact? They were conducting standard surveillance sweeps of human space. Each ship reported normal conditions, then nothing. No distress signals, no debris fields, no indication of what happened to them. The room fell silent for a moment, which in a Nexari military briefing was roughly equivalent to a full-scale panic attack. We didn't lose ships. We certainly didn't lose them to humans. Equipment failure. Quindar said finally, "These things happen. Send another reconnaissance force. Double the ships this time. Sir, with respect, I think we should consider the possibility that—" "That what?" Vasquez interrupted. "That farmers with pitchforks somehow destroyed 3 of our military vessels." "Don't be ridiculous, Keth'mori. These humans are driven by emotion, not strategy. They're probably hiding in their colonies, too scared to even turn on their communication systems." I nodded, but privately I was starting to think that maybe being driven by emotion wasn't the weakness we assumed it was. Maybe it was something else entirely, something we didn't understand. "It's continue monitoring the situation," Admiral Quindar ordered, "and prepare plans for a full-scale operation to bring these humans back in line. If they want to play games, we'll show them what real military power looks like." As I left the briefing room, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something fundamental. The humans weren't acting like any conquered species we'd encountered before. They weren't panicking, they weren't begging for mercy, and they certainly weren't surrendering. They were planning something. And whatever it was, I had a sinking feeling that our 3 missing reconnaissance ships were just the beginning. The silence from human space wasn't the quiet of defeat. It was the silence of preparation. And that, my friends, should have terrified us. 3 months. 3 months of what High Command kept calling temporary communication disruptions and minor border incidents. 3 months of me filing reports that nobody wanted to read, because reading them would mean admitting that maybe, just maybe, we had poked the wrong species with the wrong stick at the wrong time. By month 3, even Admiral Quindar couldn't ignore the fact that our primitive emotional creatures were apparently capable of making entire Nexari fleets disappear without so much as a goodbye note. "Keth'mori," he said, his usually pristine office looking decidedly less pristine these days, "I'm assigning you to investigate these irregularities in our border regions." Irregularities. That's what we were calling it when 17 of our patrol fleets simply vanished without a trace. Not destroyed, vanished. There's a difference, and it's the kind of difference that keeps intelligence officers awake at night wondering if they're about to become the next irregularity. "What exactly am I investigating, sir?" I asked, though I already knew the answer was going to be something along the lines of figure out why our superior military is getting its collective rear end handed to it by farmers. "Ships have been reporting unusual sightings along the human border," Quindar said, his mandibles clicking in what I now recognized as barely controlled panic. "Vessels that appear on sensors, then vanish. No energy signatures, no weapon discharges, no debris. They're just gone. Gone like destroyed or gone like we have no idea what happened to them." The latter, he admitted reluctantly. "And it's getting worse. Yesterday we lost contact with Border Station Zarian. 2,000 personnel gone. The automated systems are still functioning, but when we sent an investigation team, they found the station completely empty." I felt that familiar chill that comes with realizing you're dealing with something completely outside your experience. Empty how? No bodies, no signs of struggle, no indication of what happened. Just empty. So there I was, assigned to investigate the impossible, armed with nothing but a fast scout ship, and a growing certainty that our entire understanding of human capabilities was about to be proven catastrophically wrong. My first stop was the Kepler border region, where our early warning sensors had detected the most activity. What I found there defied every principle of space combat I'd ever learned. Our monitoring stations showed brief energy signatures, ships appearing for seconds at a time, then vanishing like they'd never existed. "This is impossible," I muttered to myself, reviewing the sensor data for the 100th time. "Ships can't just appear and disappear like that." That's when I got my first real look at what we were dealing with. The sensor alert came without warning, a single vessel, appearing exactly 14,000 kilometers off our port bow. Standard Nexari protocol called for immediate identification and challenge. What I saw through the view screen made me question everything I thought I knew about human technology. The ship was sleek, predatory, and completely unlike anything in our databases of human vessels. It looked like someone had taken our own stealth technology, improved it by about 3 generations, and then decided to make it look terrifyingly efficient. Unknown vessel. I broadcast, identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came in perfect Nexari, with just a hint of what I would later learn was called a Texas accent. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Force vessel Righteous Fury. You are in violation of Terran space, Nexari vessel. You have 30 seconds to withdraw before we demonstrate why that's a very bad idea. Terran Defense Force? Since when did humans have a unified military? And since when did their ships look like they belonged in our nightmares? Captain Vasquez, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, this is Nexari territory. You are the one in violation of established boundaries. Her laugh was not reassuring. Nexari territory? That's cute. See, here's the thing about territory. It belongs to whoever can defend it. And right now you're about to find out exactly how well you can defend yours. That's when the impossible happened. The human ship, this single vessel that should have been completely outmatched by my scout ship's superior Nexari technology, it proceeded to run circles around me like I was standing still. Every time I locked weapons, they vanished. Every time I tried to pursue, they appeared somewhere else. It was like fighting a ghost that had taken advanced courses in humiliation. How are you doing this? I finally asked, abandoning all pretense of military protocol. Oh, that's the beautiful part, came the reply, and I swear I could hear the grin in Captain Vasquez's voice. We learned it from you. Every engagement, every battle, every routine compliance operation we've been watching, studying, improving. Thanks for the free education. The full horror of what she was saying hit me like a plasma bolt to the brain. You've been reverse engineering our technology? Reverse engineering? Another laugh. Honey, we've been improving it. What you're seeing isn't stolen Nexari tech, it's what happens when you give humans a problem to solve and children to protect. We don't just adapt your technology, we make it better, faster, and significantly more dangerous. Before I could respond, my sensors detected something that made my blood freeze. 17 more ships, appearing in perfect formation around the Righteous Fury. Each one looked different, but they all shared that same predatory efficiency. Allow me to introduce you to General Marcus Stone, Captain Vasquez continued. He's been very interested in meeting some Nexari representatives. The largest of the new ships moved closer, and a new voice came through the comm system. Older, gruffer, with the kind of authority that comes from actually knowing what you're talking about. A Nexari vessel, General Stone said. You're going to carry a message back to your superiors. Tell them that the Terran Defense Force thanks them for their generous donation of technology and tactical information. And tell them that every human child who was hurt on New Haven has been adopted by every human military unit in known space. What does that mean? I asked, though I was starting to suspect I really didn't want to know. It means, the general replied, that you just declared war on every human parent, grandparent, sibling, and friend in the galaxy. Congratulations. You've managed to unite our entire species under a single cause. The ships vanished as suddenly as they'd appeared, leaving me alone with the terrifying realization that we hadn't just underestimated human capabilities. We'd fundamentally misunderstood what humans became when their children were threatened. And that misunderstanding was about to cost us everything. The report I filed after my encounter with Captain Vasquez and General Stone should have been classified as science fiction, not intelligence briefing. Unfortunately, reality has a nasty habit of ignoring our preferences, and the reality was that everything I thought I knew about human civilization was about to be proven spectacularly wrong. You're telling me, Admiral Quindar said, his voice carrying the kind of disbelief that comes right before complete panic, that every human settlement in known space has been militarized. That's exactly what I'm telling you, sir, I replied, spreading the holographic displays across the briefing table. Look at these reconnaissance images. Every single human colony, from the smallest farming outpost to their major population centers, has been transformed into a fortress. The images were frankly terrifying. What had once been peaceful agricultural communities now bristled with defensive installations that looked like they'd been designed by someone with a very creative understanding of the word overkill. Orbital platforms, ground-based weapon systems, and what appeared to be entire asteroid belts converted into mobile defense networks. How long did this take them? Commander Vasquez asked, and I could hear the growing concern in his voice. That's the truly disturbing part, I said, highlighting the timestamps on the images. Based on our orbital surveillance data, these fortifications were completed within 6 weeks of the New Haven incident. 6 weeks. They mobilized their entire civilization in less time than it takes us to process a standard requisition form. Admiral Quinn Dar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. That's impossible. No species can coordinate that kind of massive construction project across multiple star systems without years of planning. Unless, I said, pulling up another set of files, they had already planned for it. Sir, I've been analyzing human communication patterns from before the New Haven incident. They've been preparing for this scenario for decades. The silence that followed was the kind of quiet that comes when everyone in the room realizes they've been making catastrophically wrong assumptions about something very important. Decades? Vasquez whispered. Every human colony had pre-positioned materials, pre-planned defensive strategies, and what they call berserker protocol activation procedures. The moment word spread about New Haven, every human settlement in the galaxy simultaneously activated wartime protocols that had been waiting in place for over 30 years. What exactly is this berserker protocol? Quinn Dar asked, though his tone suggested he really didn't want to know. I pulled up the intercepted human communications, translation scrolling across the holographic display. It's a military doctrine that activates when human children are threatened. The name comes from an ancient Earth warrior culture known for fighting with complete disregard for personal safety. When this protocol is activated, every human civilian becomes a potential combatant. Every human settlement becomes a fortress, and every human ship becomes a weapon. That's madness, Vasquez protested. No rational species would militarize their entire civilization. That's exactly the point, I replied. They're not being rational, they're being emotional. And somehow they've weaponized that emotional response into the most effective military doctrine we've ever encountered. The evidence was overwhelming. Fleet Admiral Texnon's 3rd Battle Group, 27 ships, gone without a trace. The Kepler System Patrol Fleet, 18 vessels, vanished. The Meridian Border Force, 32 ships, simply disappeared. Each time, our forces encountered what appeared to be a single human vessel, engaged in combat, and then nothing. No distress signals, no debris, no indication of what happened to them. Sir, I continued, I believe the humans have been studying our military tactics for decades. Every engagement, every patrol route, every standard operating procedure, they've been cataloging our methods and developing countermeasures. Impossible, Quinn Dar said, but his protest lacked conviction. How could they have gathered that kind of intelligence without us knowing? Trade ships, I said simply, diplomatic vessels, cultural exchange programs. For 50 years, humans have been visiting our space, learning our languages, studying our technology. We thought they were just curious primitives interested in galactic civilization. In reality, they were conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in recorded history. The holographic displays showed the scope of human preparation, the hidden manufacturing facilities on remote asteroids, weapon caches disguised as mining operations, communication networks that used quantum entanglement to coordinate instantly across vast distances. Every human trader who had ever visited Nexari space had been gathering intelligence, and every human diplomat had been studying our weaknesses. They turned their entire species into an intelligence-gathering operation, I said, the full implications finally hitting me. Every human we've ever encountered has been a spy. And now they're using that intelligence against us, Vasquez said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's worse than that, I replied. They're not just using our own tactics against us. They're using our own psychology against us. They know exactly how we think, how we plan, how we react to unexpected situations. They've been studying us so thoroughly that they can predict our responses before we make them. The reports kept coming in. The Outer Rim fleet, gone. The Cygnus patrol group, vanished. The Vega System Defense Force, disappeared. Each time, our forces encountered what appeared to be minimal human resistance, engaged according to standard protocol, and then simply ceased to exist. Sir, I said, my voice steady despite the growing dread in my chest, I don't think we're fighting a war. I think we're being systematically dismantled by a species that has spent decades preparing for this exact scenario. Admiral Quindar stood slowly, his usually perfect posture showing signs of the strain. What are you recommending, Intelligence Officer? Honestly, sir, I'm recommending we seriously consider the possibility that we've made a mistake so fundamental, so catastrophic, that there may not be a way to correct it. Explain. Explain. We hurt their children, I said simply. And in response, they've turned their entire civilization into a weapon designed specifically to destroy us. Not conquer us, not defeat us, destroy us. They've been preparing for this war longer than some of our officers have been alive. And they're fighting it with a level of coordination and strategic thinking that makes our best military minds look like amateurs. The room fell silent as the full scope of our situation became clear. We weren't just losing a war, we were losing a war that had been planned and prepared for decades by a species we had consistently underestimated. And the worst part? I continued. They're not fighting to win territory or resources. They're fighting because we hurt their children. This isn't about conquest or expansion. This is about revenge. How do we fight an enemy like that? Vasquez asked. I looked at the displays showing the locations of our missing fleets, the fortified human settlements, and the growing reports of impossible human victories. I honestly don't know if we can. 6 months after the New Haven incident, I found myself standing on the observation deck of the Nexari High Command Orbital Station, watching the impossible unfold before my eyes. The human fleet had arrived at our homeworld, and frankly, calling it a fleet was like calling a supernova a small light. It's 3,000 ships, 3,000 vessels that shouldn't have existed, shouldn't have been possible, and definitely shouldn't have been able to slip past every defense system we'd spent centuries perfecting. Yet there they were, arranged in perfect formation around our homeworld, like they owned the place. Which, considering recent events, they probably did. How many ships did you say? Admiral Quindar asked, his voice carrying the kind of calm that comes right before a complete mental breakdown. 3,000 confirmed, sir, I replied, watching the displays with a mixture of professional fascination and personal terror. And that's just the ones we can see. Our sensors are detecting anomalous readings that suggest there might be significantly more using stealth technology. Stealth technology, Commander Vasquez muttered. Our stealth technology. The technology they stole from us and somehow made better. The communications array crackled to life, and a new voice filled the command center. Email, confident, with the kind of authority that suggested she'd been planning this conversation for quite some time. Nexari High Command, this is Admiral Jessica Torres of the Terran Defense Force. We need to talk. Admiral Quindar looked at me with the expression of someone who desperately wanted to wake up from a very bad dream. Patch her through. The main display flickered, showing the bridge of what was clearly the flagship of the human fleet. The Admiral Torres was exactly what I expected from a species that had spent 6 months systematically dismantling our military. Professional, calm, and absolutely terrifying. Admiral Torres, Quindar said, attempting to maintain some semblance of diplomatic protocol, you are in violation of Nexari space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Her laugh was not reassuring. Consequences? Admiral, in the past 6 months, we've eliminated 73% of your active fleet. neutralized your border defenses, and demonstrated that your superior technology is about as effective as a strongly worded letter. What consequences exactly are you planning to impose? The brutal honesty of the statement hit the command center like a physical blow. She was right, and everyone in the room knew it. Our mighty empire, our superior civilization, our advanced technology, all of it had been systematically dismantled by a species we'd dismissed as primitive emotional creatures. "What do you want?" I asked, stepping forward. Professional curiosity had overcome self-preservation instincts, which probably said something unflattering about my mental state. "Intelligence Officer Keth'mori," Admiral Torres said, and the fact that she knew my name sent chills down my spine. "We want to discuss terms." "Terms?" Quindar sputtered. "You're in no position to dictate terms." "Actually," Torres replied, "we're in the perfect position to dictate terms." "But here's the thing, we don't want to," she gestured, and the display changed to show a tactical overview of our system. Every defense station, every orbital platform, every military installation was highlighted in red. Targeted. Ready for destruction. "We could end this right now," she continued. "Complete annihilation of your homeworld, your colonies, your entire civilization. We have the capability, we have the justification, and frankly, we have the motivation." "Then why haven't you?" I asked, though I was starting to suspect the answer was going to be typically human in its complexity. "Because," Torres said, "we're not you." The simple statement carried more weight than any threat could have. We had started this conflict by targeting their children. They had responded by demonstrating they could destroy us completely. And now, instead of doing exactly what we would have done in their position, they were offering us a way out. "Our terms are simple," Torres continued. "Complete withdrawal from all human space, reparations for the damage caused on New Haven, and exile from human territory for the next 50 years, while we decide whether your species is capable of civilized behavior." "Exile?" Vasquez protested. "We are the Nexari Empire. We don't accept exile from primitives." "Commander," Torres said, and her voice carried the kind of patience usually reserved for dealing with particularly stubborn children. "You're not the Nexari Empire anymore. You're a defeated enemy being offered terms by a species that could wipe you out of existence without breaking a sweat. I'd suggest you consider that distinction carefully." The full scope of what she was offering finally hit me. Total defeat, yes, but also total survival. Complete humiliation, but also complete mercy. They had won so decisively that they could afford to be generous. "Why?" I found myself asking. "Why offer mercy to a species that showed none to your children?" Admiral Torres looked directly at me through the display, and I saw something in her eyes that made me understand, for the first time, why humans were truly terrifying. "Because," she said quietly, "we're not fighting to become monsters. We're fighting to make sure no one else's children ever have to go through what ours did." The communication ended, leaving us in stunned silence. We had started this war by underestimating human emotion, treating it as weakness. We were ending it by learning that human emotion, properly channeled, was the most dangerous force in the galaxy. They could have destroyed us. They chose not to. And that choice, more than any weapon or technology, showed us exactly why we had lost. We thought we were fighting farmers. We were actually fighting the most terrifyingly compassionate species in the galaxy. No wonder we never stood a chance.